Good morning and welcome back, everyone, to the Explicit Measures podcast with Tommy and Mike. Good morning, everybody.
Morning. I got to clear my throat, Mike, because apparently we're getting some feedback that I got a little crackly voice, which for a lot of people, that's a really famous thing if you have a good little voice in the morning. So I apologize for those who are having an issue with the groggy voice in the morning. I'm up usually, so I'll try my best. We'll cough when we need to, offline. So
Exactly. It's just funny. People it's just, I think the general nature of people, they complain about everything, like every little thing. Why does it look like this? Why does it sound like that? Well, if you want to get up for every morning at 7:30 a.m. for 4 years, let me know. Then we'll talk. Like, we're trying our best.
440 episodes at this point. So, hey, at least
trying our best.
At least we don't know of. They're not complaining about the content. They're not like, you guys don't know what you're talking about.
Yes, true statement. That might be somewhat true. Let's talk about our main topic today. Just introduce the main topic. So the main topic for today, we're going to kind of reflect on our last 10 years in working with Power BI, maybe some key milestones, some key features that we kind of really felt changed things for us, maybe even talking a bit about our career, just kind of open conversation about our reflection of 10 years working with Power BI. Just getting a feel for what we've done over these last 10 years and how the program has evolved, how we've evolved. I think both things have happened. We've changed, the program has changed. So this will be kind of fun, good conversation, kind of lighthearted here. And then that's our main topic. But before we do that, let's get into some news. I do have some announcements. So for those of you who follow Power BI tips, and many of you may know us from the theme generator. So we have theme.powerbi.tips. That's one of the tools that we produce. Some people don't know or haven't seen it yet. If you are a Microsoft Fabric user, the Power BI tips theme generator, which we're kind of more than just theming at this point. Like, we do wireframing and we have backgrounds and we have templates and a gallery, probably the largest collection of free, ready to use template and galleries that are in the market at this point. So we are now not only just the website, themes.powerbi.tips, but we're also Power Designer. We've rebranded a little bit, and we have now landed ourselves as a new tool inside Microsoft Fabric. So now you can go ahead and use Microsoft Fabric. You can open up your theme generation directly inside Microsoft Fabric, build your themes there, and it actually creates an item in the workspace. You actually have a single item in the workspace that is your theme file. Well, the announcement is, we are now, typically you have to, if you wanted to pay for a premium license, you had to go buy it through PayPal, and it's a little bit of a complicated works, and you had to go to a website, all this stuff. Well, now this month, we have released the ability for you to go buy a Tips Plus subscription, or subscriptions, actually multiples if you'd like, through your enterprise. So your enterprise can now go buy a license or a group of licenses for your organization, which is kind of fun. That's a new thing for us. So if you want to buy 15 seats for people, you can go do that all online. You can buy it through Azure Marketplace or Source. So depending on where you like to buy things, if you're an individual, you're a business that doesn't control Azure, you don't have to buy it through Azure. You can go buy it through Azure, through AppSource. If you want to go buy it through Azure, you can as well. So it's the same price in both places. There's no change there. It's also the same price as if you bought it through us directly through PayPal. So in all situations here, we're trying to make it easy for people to get the license. And Tommy, I got to be honest, every time someone sends, a lot of times, other MVPs, people will send me stuff. They're like, look, someone's building the same tool you're building. And then I go, oh, interesting. So I look at the tools, there's, check them out. They're always really expensive. Like, every time I look at them, they're like $10 minimum for every single tool. And like, it doesn't make sense to me. You're buying powerbi.com for like $14 a user, and then you need to buy another $10 program just to use or make you go a little bit faster in Power BI. That seems absurd. So we come in at a very low price. If you pay at a year at a time, we come in at $2 per user per month, which is like nothing. That's less than a cup of coffee. And then we also come in at $3 per user per month if you want to pay monthly. So if you're not really sure you want to commit to a full year of software, you want to try it out for just a month, it's reasonable, and it's only $3. Anyways, just wanted to point that out and highlight, we've got a new way for you to purchase a Tips Plus subscription. And one last announcement around this one. Tommy, when you've made a theme design, I know you've used my theme designer a couple of times.
Quite extensively, actually, yeah.
What's been the most...
bugs.
What would be one? And this is unplanned. So this could go really south really fast. Tell me, what is the one thing that's kind of difficult what's the most difficult thing in working with theming designing?
Got a list. But
I know you
I'm
got a
gonna say
list.
for me, it's the independent visuals that I'm trying to change and then trying to go back and edit. It's like, okay, I have this particular property
Mm-hmm.
and just going through it like, okay, I need to change the color, I need to change the
Yep.
font, but I need to do that for each visual and then finding it because that list is so long. I know there's
Yep.
search, but sometimes the names don't align.
Yep. Awesome. Okay. So let me not preemptive,
Not
but let me
planned, not planned. So this
not
could be
planned
a
at all.
great
This could be interesting. We are announcing a new feature in the next week or so. We're trying to get it out the door. So one thing you can do with Power Designer in Fabric is you can render your Power BI reports, your existing Power reports from a different workspace and show them with your theme file on top of them. So Tommy, one thing you're asking about, look, I have a pre-built report. I'm uploading a theme file to it continually. I'm not sure if it's like looking right. It's not correct. It doesn't quite look exactly the way I want it to. That's okay. That's no problem. In the Power Designer application inside Fabric, you can preview any report you want. You can work on the theme file. You can click on preview, and then you can just see your effect of your visuals, your theming file directly on the report. So one, that's available to you. One, you have the ability to do that. So that's
in
awesome.
the Fabric environment, right? Not in the independent.
In the Fabric. Yeah, in the Fabric, not the website, because we don't, the workloads give us a little bit more access to other things that you want to render for the application. So the workload actually does more things. So Power Designer actually does more stuff. And also, Tommy, how nice would it be for you to build your template and with a one button press, deploy the template into the service and also bind it automatically to a semantic model that you choose.
Are you really doing that finally? Finally?
Yep, it's
This
there.
is one of we always talk about Microsoft. When are you going to do this? It just makes sense. This is my one. Yeah.
This is a pretty big one, I think. So we've been working on the feature. We are actively in development stage right now. We're testing it out. We're getting some bugs out of the way. We're adjusting the UI slightly, but technologically wise, my developer gave me a build this week. I'm doing active testing on it, and we will be able to build the entire report project and land the PBIP file directly into the service. And oh, by the way, this is the best part. Well, what if I want to download it? What if I need the PBIX file from it? No problem. You can actually go open the report and you can just download the PBIX file directly to your machine and you're good to go. So you could actually still download the project even though the whole project was made initially by Power Designer, which I think will be a really, I'm going to call it, it's going to be a very different way to people using their report designing workflow. It's going to really change how people, I think, initially think about building their first report, or even you have a team of people and you want all the people to go start from a single template, right? Anyways, we're looking for feedback on this. It'll be out shortly. I'm hoping to land this as an announcement here pretty soon. And we'll announce and get this out there so that you can immediately build your theme file, build your report pages, and then immediately publish it directly to the service.
Well, Mike, I mean, just stamp preview on it. You got a runway of 4 years minimum, right? So get a preview
easy
on it. So
easy.
So 2 questions about this because this is going to be the make or break for me. One, I think you answered one of them, which is going to be a big deal. If I use a theme designer, Power Designer, and I modify a report in the service, that doesn't break. Like if I edit a report in the service, I can't download the PBIX anymore. That's not the case here. I can still download it. It doesn't affect, in a sense, editing the semantic model.
Yeah, correct.
All right, that's a big one.
And that's kind of what the point of here is. Like we're using the new PBIP format, which again is now
does not modify the tabular model.
Nope, right. It does not modify. It's just a thin report, and we're just publishing your thin report out to the service, and that means now the designer can build the design and immediately make changes to the file. So we're planning a lot of new features around a PBIP format of things and how we're going to be able to integrate that more deeply. We're looking at, again, we're kind of on the backlog thinking about, let's imagine you have an existing report and I want to add a page to it. Well, I may want to know what was the original theme file that was made. May want to go back to the original theme file and then add another page or two from there, right? Just add more pages. So, take an existing report and add themed things to it, right? Or let's what if we let's look at your original report and compared your theme file of your report compared to the stylized theme that you have. Like, what's different? What is difference between the two files? So now that we have access to the PBIP format, and it's becoming much more common in the PowerBI.com service, we can actually do a lot more with the API calls and actually talking and manipulating reports directly inside our tool.
Does it respect individual modifications like a normal theme does if I were to upload that? So let's say I had my normal theme, but I just change a line chart and I change the color from the default blue to a random red. Does it respect the individual modifications, but it just overwrites everything else?
Yeah, it's a good question. So when you build the theme files have a hierarchy of what's being applied, right? So it's kind of like before everything else, the first thing that's applied is the theme file. Whatever the theming file you do, that's the first thing that's applied. And then there's another layer above that, which is like the visual style. So there's actually a couple other layers in here as well. So there's actually, every time you open up a PBIX file or Power BI file in desktop, there's actually a base theme file. The base theme is actually the theme that report comes with. Then on top of it, they add the imported theme. So that the imported theme overrides any of the base theme items. Then the visual overrides any of the base imported theme options, and the visual is basically the final say. So this is why sometimes people, especially, they'll ask me like, "Hey, I made my bar chart. It was set to blue because of the theme file. I changed the bars to be gray. Now when I update the theme file, it doesn't change." Yes, that is correct, because you've overridden the theme files because the visual itself has been physically changed, and you're basically overriding all the other properties. So there's like a very weird hierarchy of how this all works. So we're not impacting any of these stylized visual pieces. One of the things that we're looking at, again, would be very helpful here is, especially if you're looking at a report, what if you wanted to see, like, reset everything to default? There is no button to reset all visuals to default styles. So that's something that doesn't exist, but programmatically we can make that happen now with the Power Designer type program. So these are things that are on our backlog of like, okay, we just need to like kind of groom the community and figure out which feature is most important to the community. We'll work on those first and kind of go from there. Anyways, just fun announcements around designing and power designing stuff. We've been doing a lot of work around app dev for this, and hopefully you, the community, will find a lot of value from this, and it will save you a ton of time, hopefully. So I know, Tommy, it's already saved you a ton of time working with clients and building theme files and stuff for them.
I really do. I really do. And again, really no pandering here. I've tried all the other tools. I am a person who's going to go through anything that's going to make my life easier, and I will try everything. And it's been the most seamless for me. I really do like the Fabric workload. I know before it was just the Power BI theme designer workload, but now we're just calling it Power Designer. I guess designer is no longer a word that is the original Power BI designer. So not
maybe
unless you're competing.
maybe it's a throwback. So this is actually going to lead into our original. Yeah, it's a throwback to like the original, Our Designer when it was.
This one actually makes a little more sense from the name. We design.
Yes,
that's what we do.
Yes,
kind of thing, so
exactly right. Awesome. Let's get into our main topic today. Let's just talk about 10 years of Power BI. How do we get started, Tommy? Like maybe we've done this a couple times before, but maybe we just kind of, what do you think? What do you want to talk about? What's up on your mind?
Well, I think this is a great time to talk about this and really dive in more. Again, we've mentioned this a lot, but you and I are lucky because we started with Power BI literally when it came out. For myself, we were looking at business intelligence tools in May of 2015. And
your company was actually looking to make a shift. It was trying to change to something new.
Yeah, we were using a whole multitude of tools. There wasn't one universal thing at the organization. They're like, hey, you like researching things, you do this kind of thing. And so it didn't really find, I tried Quilk and QuickSense and all these other ones, and nothing that was sticking. June comes around, and I cannot remember where I got the announcement from. And to this day, I don't know if I Googled it. I don't know if it just came up on whatever Microsoft feed, but it's like introducing Power BI Designer. Okay. So immediately I downloaded it. And like I said, the rest is history. We'll dive into that. But you and I both had that kind of moment when it started. So I call us one of the lucky ones who've been dealing with this tool. And here's the thing. for me, this wasn't my life before this. Like I was doing data analytics, but Power BI, and when that came out, has literally changed my career and probably changed where I live right now because of that. So there's a lot here in terms of from a professional, from a personal, and I think just to what that's also meant for the greater industry as well. So there's kind of the individual side of this, and then what this is really meant for just working with people and working with data. So I think for me, let's start with kind of that first impression on setting the stage for dealing with Power BI for a whole decade now.
Yes. Yeah. So I'll give you, so to your point, Tommy, you did a little like introduction of like how you got to Power Designer, how you got to Power BI. Eventually it changed it wasn't Power Designer for very long. It was only like, I think it was like April, May in 2025 or 2015. Wait, we got that all wrong. 2015. And then it very quickly changed from Power Designer to Power BI Desktop. Like it was kind of like initially the initial change there, which I really wish it had stayed kind of Power Designer. It kind of would have been a great name.
Well, it was Power BI Designer, I think. I don't think it was just Power Designer.
Oh, that's just my tool. That's okay.
Yeah. So I was about to say, I think another steak's on the table. So
yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, and now it's kind of more, anyways, we'll get beyond that. They name changed it. So I started doing some things in Excel. Actually, my entry into this was Excel and using all the Power tools that went through Excel. So that may have been where you found it too, Tommy. Maybe you were in Excel and maybe there was an announcement there around like something inside Excel let you know, hey, there's this new product or tool around. But there was Power View, Power Query, and Power Maps, I believe, were the three things. Was it Power Pivot?
Oh yeah.
Power Pivot. Maybe it was Power Pivot, Power View, and Power Maps. Three of those things. I don't remember exactly. It's a little vague, but regardless, I was using those things as add-ins into my Excel documents. So I was going to Excel, I was making these add-ins, and it was kind of a bit clunky because at the time, the version of Excel we had, anyone I wanted to give these files to, they needed the add-ins for these things to work. So they just weren't built into the product. Eventually, they became built in, and it was much easier for everyone to kind of adopt the analysis services, the thing. So anyways, I started using Power. It was SharePoint BI. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah. I mean, listen. I remember seeing it. I remember touching it a few times. I remember going, not for me. It was the square. It was when SharePoint were all apps and they're all the square. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yes. So so that SharePoint BI is kind of where I started. I remember doing some like interact. So I started in Excel. I saw that I could make this page where I clicked on things and everything changed. I thought, wow, this is very different. I'm not used to seeing something like this because I was used to building, to your point, Tommy, I was in Excel building charts and tables and things. And then I was using slicers to manipulate data inside Excel. That's basically all I could do in Excel. But there was no clicking on a bar chart and getting other things on the page to interact. So that was my aha moment. Like, wow, this is very different. I've never seen this before. This is like super exciting. Okay, interesting. So I then moved into SharePoint BI slightly. And very quickly around that time, that's when I guess April, May, Power Designer came out. There's probably same thing, an announcement, and then you had the standalone desktop application. So we're off to the races. So that's kind of how I started as well. So very similar story. We weren't doing a tool evaluation. We were just in an analytical department looking at things.
Yeah.
So,
and it's funny, Mike, because it's one thing for just a random tool to come out, but I want to ask you, when did you decide to kind of, in a sense, put all of your eggs in that basket? Or did you actually decide to invest all your time there? For me personally, once I started really showing Power BI and really using it, I made a conscious decision that, and I have a few kind of factors. Well, this is new, so the barrier to entry is probably pretty low. It's a Microsoft tool, so it can kind of be around everyone, because that was the hardest thing too with a lot of other BI tools, was the fact that, oh, you need a different license and a different login. It's like, well, this should be seamless. And I thought it was one of the coolest things I ever saw. So for me, I made a conscious decision very early that I am going to be the best I can possibly be at this. I'm going to put my eggs in this basket from a time, resource, and skill point of view. And if it didn't work, fine, but it was a risk I took that worked out. But for you, did you ever have a conscious moment where you were like, I am going to go all in on this particular platform?
Ooh, that's a really good point, Tommy. So let me give you a bit of. I'm gonna mix and match a little bit of this point with the career, with my career at the same time. So again, I think this is also an evolution of people in their careers as well. Even now, when I talk to people, right? So when we consult with individuals, we try and figure out how to where does this tool fit in our organization. People are giving it to me. I've actually been working with a number of people for years, multiple years, around. They are given a task of, hey, I'm trying to manage Power BI. I need a little help. And so I'll do a little bit of consulting, 1 or 2 hours a month, and we'll sit down and talk about the strategy. How do we do it? What do we roll it out to? And I've seen multiple people working with me where their careers have gone from, I'm just the BI guy on some small team, to I'm now the owner of Power BI. I'm now managing central BI for our organization. I'm now building reports that go across all computer monitors or all operational monitors in our business. So like I've seen people grow, and it's not me growing them. It's just the idea that they're passionate about the data. They see this happening and they grow into it. So what was your question again? I totally lost the question. I'm just getting excited here.
It tends to happen on here. No, did you have a moment?
Oh, my aha moment. Okay, got it.
Where you wanted to put everything in that basket. Yeah.
Sorry. I'm seeing this. So all the point of this stories were there's a lot of people who have had these kind of moments, and I've been able to kind of watch and guide them through. And this is very common. You're given part of Power BI, the story, you start doing it well, you start making it effective for the organization, and then you get more responsibility, and then you start teaching it, and then you start leading it, and then you start giving it out, and it spreads across the organization. So for me, that moment when I went all in, I was currently in the battery division of Johnson Controls. Johnson Controls owned a portion of the company that was battery. And I was in the sales and marketing side of things. And I was in the analytical team on the sales and marketing. At the time, I was running a call center. So I was the manager of the call center. We had a number of call members that were servicing our customers in a different state. But I was the one, like, if anything went really bad or really south and someone was very angry about a battery or return or something like that, it would get escalated to me and I would handle that escalation. But I also had team members under me that could, help out customers, troubleshoot, and all that stuff. So I was dealing with a lot of data, call center data. I was dealing with a lot of analytical data from all of our customers.
That's a monstrosity too, man.
Yeah, it taught me a lot of things. It was a great job. The team was amazing. I had a lot of great people to work with. I learned a lot there. And there was a moment when I was in that department, I thought, wow, this data stuff is so cool. And I don't think I'd ever been really exposed to point of sale data. Imagine like a big customer, like a Walmart, right? They've got a lot of point of sale data, tons of information. The volume of data at that level was just enormous. Now, again, coming from mechanical engineering, I was dealing with like data, lots of data, but it wasn't like millions of rows data, right? It was like thousands of rows data, tens of thousands of rows data, because I'm doing testing, I'm doing a lot of statistics, a lot of math. So a lot of that was like my engineering work, but like this was like volumes of data. And this was really exciting to me. I really like this. The challenges were big, the problems were hard. It took a while to really massage and get this data down. And we had to do, it was just great. I think I grew a lot of my personality around that time and just loving data. And that's at the moment when I'm like, okay, I have a very large amount of data. I'm struggling in Excel to get everything done. It just is falling over. And then I started using Power Query, and then I started using Power BI. And so there was this physical moment in time where the technology could not keep up with the volumes of data I was working with. And so I got really good at Power Query and then a lot of the early stages of Power BI. And that's when I was like, this is a game changer. Like I see there's a technological gap here that this tool solves, and I'm learning it, and I'm like, I'm all in on this. And so at that point, that's exactly the moment when I started my blog in, I think it was 2016. Yeah. 2016 is when I started my blog. So Power BI came out in 2015. 2016, I'm like, I'm going to just do this. I went to the first Data Insight Summit from Microsoft. So I was at the very first one. I have the old t-shirt, the blue t-shirt with like the logo in the middle. That was the very first conference around, and it was only Excel and Power BI. Yeah. It was just those two pieces of the conference. I thought, oh, wow, there's a very small knit small niche of group members here. And I jumped in. That's when I met Seth. That's when Seth and I went to the user group for Power BI. We started that in Milwaukee. Actually, Seth started it and I joined and helped out a lot with that. So that was really kind of the start of everything for me. At that moment, I was like, I'm bought into the tool. Now, you asked, was there like when did you really commit to it? I think I really committed to it when I left the battery division and moved over to a different department in Johnson Controls, which was a very IT shop. And I left the position for it was basically like a data visualization and design role. Now, I didn't actually do any of that because that was the role they were hiring for. I applied for it because I had the Power BI experience. But in reality, they just basically stuck me as a program manager in front of a technology product. But it was very formative. But that was a moment where I used this as a technology tool, and I'm making a physical decision to apply for jobs specifically in that area that was solely around data visualization. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. This is a tool. It's going to define my career. Let's go. And then I think there's maybe one more big moment where I left corporate America and I went to a consulting firm to only work on Power BI. So at that time, it was like I was working on Power BI, but it was like part-time, right? It was like when I had time, build a little thing here or there. I would show some people this or teach a little bit here and there. I was involved in the community, but it wasn't my full-time job. I wasn't exclusively thinking, building, creating only in Power BI. That didn't happen until I went off to go do consulting. And that's when I was like, that's all I'm going to do. I'm going to take calls. I'm going to sell customers. And you had to be really good at the tool by that point, because I had to convince customers that we were the company to work with to go build their Power BI environment, build their Power BI reports, build the Power BI project. That was something we had to go convince customers of to sell it, that this is the way to go.
There's two big points here I think that are worth mentioning that from your story that are really permanent, I think, for a lot of people even today. One, I think the first one is about the career change or the job change. For me, it was actually my job I didn't move somewhere for Power BI. Initially, the first two, they morphed, they evolved, where I came in to do one thing and they found that I was skilled, loved Power BI, we're going to use it. So what I was initially asked to do was no longer what I was doing because of Power BI. So, and I think for a lot of people, your responsibilities get expanded, and especially when Power BI first came out, and I think what's going to happen more with Fabric too, where you were tasked to do X, Y, and Z, but once you become skilled, experienced in these tools because they're so accessible, well, you're going to get asked to do it more. And that was one of the biggest challenges too, because I still had my normal responsibilities, but on top of that, I was at the time the only one who knew how to do Power BI. Mm-hmm. And I think for a lot of people, that's something to be aware of. And I think, like I said, to me, I think this is going to really expedite or really grow with Fabric because it has 6 careers in it. It's not just a single business intelligence thing, it's engineering, science. So I think we're going to keep seeing that. The other thing too is, and this is what I think one of the biggest hurdles, I think we're in the same moment right now with Fabric, where it's one thing for us as the individual to start getting excelled experience and as good as we can in the individual tool. But it's a whole other thing too when it's the organization. It can't just be you using it for it to be successful somewhere or for you to get a job somewhere. The company has to use it. The team has to use it. And to me, I think we're actually at the same point right now where a lot of organizations are deciding, do we want to jump all in with Fabric or do we stay with Power BI? This was the same thing that happened where there weren't a lot of jobs. I remember the first 3 years when I started leading a user group down in Florida.
Yep.
It was my full-time thing. I would get calls and I would talk to recruiters and they're like, well, no one's saying Power BI. They still want you to do, SSRS, but yeah, there's some Power BI stuff too. There weren't individual things out there because it wasn't completely widely adopted. And so I'm going to pause there or kind of take that moment there where from a hurdle point of view, when did you start seeing from a wider side of organizations, especially that you worked at the consulting firm, did you see or feel that initial hesitation from a lot of organizations or the industry as a whole? And when did you start seeing people start going, you know what, we're going to invest in this as from a company point of view?
Yeah, I think a lot of this stems from, I mean, this, to be very honest, I mean, Power BI is a business. So let's talk about the different areas of what we're talking about here for Power BI. Power BI is a business user tool, right? It fits inside the Excel world of things, right? That's what you can do with it. It's a free download. And I think one of the brilliant things that made Microsoft really use this very well was they gave away Power BI Desktop for free, right? So any business user, if my organization allowed me to install applications, which some do, some would allow applications to be installed, and particularly from the App Source store from Microsoft, all a user had to do was, I need Power BI Desktop. And they could download desktop and they could work with millions of rows of data. Like that, there's a brilliance in them giving that away for free. And I think there also was, so Excel, you can't get it for free. It's part of an Office suite package. It's part of that piece. So it doesn't just come to you for free. So, it's almost as if, right, when Microsoft was doing this whole Microsoft Office package, when they're bundling all the software and having it deployed, it's almost like they're also giving you Power BI as part of that business suite package, right? Does that make sense? Because it's free. You can just go download it.
Email. As long as you had a Windows computer, you don't have to be signed into anything, and you could start using Power BI right away.
Correct. That was the genius move here. So I think on one hand of this, it was this very grassroots, like they were advertising for the product inside Excel. You could see things coming around. The community was starting to get a little bit more interested about this. So I think it was kind of a very grassroots. It would land on one person's desk and this is the exact same approach that Tableau uses. Tableau, if you talk to their sales team, it's a, what do they call it? It's I call it like a weeds approach. Right? Plant the seed in someone in their department, their computer, right? And then from there, they use Tableau. And then they're like, from there, it spreads.
They become the disciples. They become the salespeople.
Exactly right. They become the sales team for them to then, we need this because it does X, Y, Z things. And look at all these great visuals I can build with it in a short amount of time. Like that was the landing of the product. And then from there, it kind of grew as a weed across the organization. And so Microsoft, I think, did a good job, or at least mirroring that, because Tableau came out 5 years before Power BI. And so
it was the market leader by a mile.
A long shot. Yeah. And in college, that's what I learned, right? When I was in my master's for data science, it wasn't let's learn Power BI. It was let's learn Tableau. That was the program we were choosing to learn. Now I think more organizations or more schools are trying to teach and educate more on Power BI. I actually teach a class in Power BI at the UWM campus, or not on campus, online, but basically for UWM, University of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And once or twice a year, I show up and I teach a full class around Power BI introduction. We do a little bit of Power Query. We build some visuals. We go through some of the basic features of Power BI Desktop, and that's what we use. So that's now the organizations, the schools, the education space is starting to get on board with all these technologies and tool pieces. So man, Tommy, I'm losing track. I'm gonna have to write down your questions from now on because I keep losing track of your question. But did that answer it, or am I still off base?
You're pretty far off, actually. But
okay,
no. I think, like I said, kind of framing the question here.
Organizations and where they start.
When you get excited, man, it's one of my favorite things.
Sorry, there's just so many things to talk about. So organizations, when they drive adoption, right? So when does that start happening? So this whole land and spread technology piece, that's kind of what I see happening. So a lot of organizations weren't willing to buy Power BI. It was more of we were just struggling to get our Excel user base to be more effective, right? And it kind of came in this route of help us be more effective with our Excel user base, which is again pure business. And so Power BI assisted there. So that the most of the conversation was, how can we leverage this tool to help our existing Excel user base to do more things with data? And then it quickly grew into more of a governance conversation and how do we roll it out? What does this look like? Do we really want to use Power BI.com? I remember the initial stages of hesitation. I don't hear this anymore, but the initial stages of hesitation was, I don't want it online. I can't have our data go online. Do you remember that?
Yes.
That was I was constantly combating well, what do you mean you don't want it online? They're like, well, you don't want our data being given to Microsoft and, they could see it, or it's in the cloud. And what if it gets hacked? All these kind of things, right?
It's the cloud. We want
the cloud.
Yeah.
We want to be in the cloud. So there was a huge hesitation there. And I think a lot of my fear fighting, let's call that fear fighting in the beginning, was a lot of for organizations letting them be comfortable with using things in the cloud. Now, I think because of Fabric, because of Power BI, we've had a great shift in mentality of businesses. I never, at this point, never have a conversation about going to the cloud now. That's not even a concern anymore. Everyone's comfortable with taking their stuff and putting it in Microsoft's cloud because they know it's secure. Now, at the time when I was having these conversations, it was a lot about SharePoint. So SharePoint was also on-prem or in the cloud.
Yeah,
and a lot of organizations were moving to SharePoint Online because it was easier. Like that was a move to go into the cloud. And my argument to these companies were, you already have SharePoint Online, which is all your files, all your Excel files, all your PDFs, everything, like everything you're doing to share work between Tommy and me and whatever the team members, you're already online 100%. They're like, yeah, but like, no, yeah, but we're 100% in Microsoft's cloud and you are putting all your files into SharePoint Online. This is no different. This is like SharePoint Online for your data. And they're like, oh, we're already, yeah. And so there was like this very large hesitation from the IT side of things because they didn't understand what was actually happening here. And I think the argument, oh, Andrew, you make a great point. You trust Microsoft's cloud infrastructure more than your on-prem infrastructure. And I would agree with that. When I walk into organizations that have on-prem infrastructure, some are up to speed. Most are not. Most are fighting to get money and capital and whatever just to buy the latest version of SQL Server, just to keep things updated, and there's a team of people at that organization that are hired to make sure the infrastructure is always current and on and up to par with security standards. You don't have to do that anymore. That's all like Microsoft will own all that for you, and you focus on the software that you use, and Microsoft patches everything. I don't need this is one of the genius things about SQL Server and Fabric. I'm not updating to the latest version of SQLs. It just works. And when a new feature is released, I use it. Easy. Like I don't want to, me as a company, I don't want to spend time managing which version of SQL Server I'm on. The infrastructure management has clearly been moved over to like large organizations, and that's been commoditized. And every single cloud provider now offers like infrastructure, security patches, and management on their own. It's up to them to manage that. And that's kind of what you want. You want the big company to take that risk of security and management. All you have to do as an employee or company is make sure everyone's using MFA. Make sure everyone's doing things securely on their machine and getting it back into the cloud. The more you can use a web browser, the more secure it becomes.
Well, I mean, at this point too, it's not just with data, but most technology, you really don't have a choice if you just want to stay ahead. I want to tie a little of this too with, I think, where we are in an inflection point with Fabric. And one of the bigger hurdles that occurred to me, and I'm curious if it happened to you, but I think one of the biggest barriers, or I think really decision points for me it's twofold. And we'll start with kind of the micro point of view. It was the lack of identity. I think on like who we were, like what did we do? And because again, we don't have set, hey, you're a business intelligence level 2, and then you get upgraded to a level 3. I mean, heck, for a long time, and even today, go to LinkedIn jobs, go to other places, you're not going to find similar job names or titles for the same roles. And I think this has been one of the hardest things for organizations and for the individuals. It was hard for me because I don't know who I was. I don't know what I was applying for, or the company in turn trying to value me as well, much less the technology on like, well, what do you do and what is the value of that compared to a lot of other jobs? Well, if I'm a director of marketing, right? Well, there's already an index there. There's a baseline there on what we know they're supposed to do, and we know what their value is.
Built on like what, 30 years, 40 years of like knowledge and like
but
stuff that's out there already.
Yeah, but for us, especially Power BI, because it is so radically different compared to any other reporting tool, because at the time, reporting tools were the visual side of things. And you and I both know very well our job was a lot more than just designing. We had to do the modeling. All of a sudden, we're taking on this governance side because we got to make sure the data is right coming in. That was all our responsibility compared to DBA and someone going through the table. And then we just built reports. So let me ask you, did you have a moment, any frustration or a point of reflection where you're like, I don't know exactly what we are, or has it not been defined yet? And to me, this was very permanent, especially around 2018, 2019.
I'm going to answer this maybe I'm going to take your question. I'm going to maybe slightly answer it a little bit differently. What did I see like a position role change in that time period? I think what was building was at the time there was no demand from the business for a specific Power BI role, right? So like I think a lot of these positions were driven from we're kind of self-driven, right? I found the technology. I was in the tool. I was doing these things. I knew that this tool could add value to organizations or teams, but the organization or the company wasn't quite aware of it yet and wasn't like strategically putting investment behind. We need skills that are people that know how to use this tool. So I was a bit ahead of the curve in that regard, right? So I think around 2018 and maybe up to 2020, there's a lot of time in there. Organizations were starting to get their legs around. Oh, this is a thing. We actually find that Power BI is making us more effective as an organization. We actually need to figure out skills. And so I also want to argue there, before, and there's people can argue against this, right? And you can maybe, take this how you will, right? I'm going to give you my perception of the market at that time. I perceived the market to be, you had SQL DBAs or data engineering or data teams, right? Very technical people trained in managing and running SQL databases or data systems, right? Big systems. And then you had an analyst or the business team, whatever you want to call it. And the chasm between those two people were very wide, right? The business team wasn't modeling data. The business team wasn't building measures. The business team wasn't building really weird calculations. What was happening was the analyst was using tools given to you by the SQL DBA or the DBAs of the data world. Right, I'm going into business object. And what I was doing as a user at that time was I wasn't making pretty reports. I wasn't making interactive reports. I wasn't making data dashboards at that time. I was going in and going to some large data warehouse system. I was picking the columns I needed. I added the filters that I wanted, and I would export the data out. The data would export. I would go to Excel, and then I would continue to massage, add data, clean things as I needed to, because that's what I needed to be as the business user, like the analyst, right? So I think there was a very large gap between, it was very distant. And in that 2018 to 2020 range, I think with the addition of Power BI, we started bringing more technical skills to the business side, right? And so now I'm getting tooling from the Microsoft. The data is becoming a commodity. I'm getting more things coming into that ecosystem that makes it easier for me to work with and shape data. So that again, also around this time, I was actually in a couple of companies where the money was not getting funded to IT. More dollars were getting attributed to the business side of things. So the business, the parts of the company that made money, revenue generating systems in the company, those parts of the businesses were getting more money. And so they were hiring more technical people that could still talk like an analyst, but do more of the DBA work. And so, how you define these roles now, I don't really know, but I feel like there, in my mind, there is like the data engineer, which I would maybe call it the SQL DBA or that DBA person. There's a data engineer. And then there's this middle layer. It's like someone who can speak to the business, but then can also talk very technically. There's this data modeler.
Yeah.
The liaison, right? The data modeler, right? And so maybe that is maybe some of the roles of the data modeler persona come out of data engineering, but also some of the roles of that data modeler come out of the analyst. So you could call them an analyst, but I think that's underselling the role of that person, right? And it's not quite full analyst, but it's not quite full DBA or DBA as well. It's kind of a blend, a hybrid. So I see Power BI coming into the mix here and actually really blurring the line between data engineering and analyst. And I use the term data modeler. And then we have report builder. And then we have report consumer. So there's a lot. To me, I think what this has done is Power BI has made reporting and report building a commodity. Anyone can do it. It has brought super technical aspects of the data engineering world closer to the business. So people can now play with these more elaborate things. And there's people in the business who are building incredible data models, huge, millions of rows, hundreds of millions of rows, all built in the business side of things. And they're not part of data engineering world's team. They're not working exclusively in like Databricks. And so now I just see this evolution. Now we're moving forward to now in the last 2 years. So 2 years ago would be 2013 with the announcement of Fabric. All you're doing, 2023, sorry, 2023. I don't know why I'm saying 2003. 2023, let's get the timeline right. But now with the addition of Fabric, you now are even bringing even more of those data engineering type roles into this ecosystem where it's right next to the person who's now the data modeler analyst persona, right? So now we actually have a single platform that both data engineering teams and business analyst teams can work side by side and collaboratively work together on the same things. And there's no barrier to entry for any of these business users. They can just spin up a lakehouse. A business user can spin up a SQL server and start building things on top of it for what they need. Like there's almost no barrier for those team members to now manage that now. So that's what I see things
that's
happening.
A blessing and a curse though to me. So
it totally is.
And there's a few reasons. Again, I think personally, it's never been more apparent than now because you are blurring 6 careers on top of Mike. I changed departments. Like we were changing, like doing laundry at 2 different organizations. Like, no, you're going to be in sales. You're going to be in marketing. Well, you should probably be sales. Actually, you're a central BI team. Actually, you're going to be under finance. Most organizations, and if I were to ask everyone even listening here, what team or what department should BI be under, I'm going to get different answers, which is insane to me still, because I don't know any other form or team at an organization that still has a lack of that clear identity. Is it under the CDO if you have one? No, it should be under IT. No, finance makes the most sense. And the thing is, and I'm not just trying to say all the negatives here, but I think this is something to be very aware of, that our technology is always moving so much faster than the people can adapt to. This is no different 10 years ago to me, and it's never been more apparent now. We're in a great space. And the really cool thing is, I don't care if I've been working in the tool for 10 years. Like, and I can say that's neat. Okay. But if I went on vacation for 6 months, I'm behind. Like, it doesn't matter. It's not like I have this knowledge that I can apply from 10 years ago. The technology is changing so rapidly that organizations can't keep up. A lot of people can't keep up. Again, go back to my example on try to find a common job title with a common salary that's valued universally, which you will not find, or find commonality between what department Power BI should be in, much less Fabric now. And I think this is to me, a really incredible point of what we do. It's kind of the thing I also like too, in a weird sadistic sort of way, because it really forces you to change and learn. But man, dude, this is such a hard, I think, difficult thing for us to navigate at the same time.
I want to pick on your comment there, Tommy. I think your idea around what team should what should this be under? Who's leading the helm on this one? I find this very interesting. I guess my question to you would be, or my thought here is, where have you seen this be most effective for organizations? What team under what team does this look like the best? And I'll just give you some of my initial opinion. I don't think there's a single answer to this one. I think this is going to be an opinion-based thing on what you've experienced. I also think this is going to be where you are in a company or what kind of culture your company has will determine whether or not this is effective in different ways, right? So, for example, if your organization is really struggling to get financial reporting under place and you're very driven on sales, finance, marketing of things, hold on, I gotta sneeze. Excuse me. I think under finance makes a lot of sense. But then I also argue, like, well, the finance team is usually very connected to what's happening in the IT world because they're getting data from IT or using systems from IT that they need help with. So in larger organizations, right, if you put this BI department under only finance, they're going to need to work with IT because they need technically access to the data or SQL servers, and it's not efficient for us to be exporting a bunch of small data pieces out over and over again in files just to have them loaded again into Power BI. So that doesn't make sense either. So then you would say, well, maybe we should put it under IT, but then if they become under the IT umbrella, we lose some visibility to what the business is needing and what they're doing. So you need an analyst in the business. So I think this data, data spans all parts of the company. I'll just say that. There's never a place in any part of any company where there is no data. I would agree with that. I think you would solely agree with that one too, Tommy.
Yeah.
So as I look at this, I go, I'm not sure if it really matters where does it make it the sense to be most effective. I do think a federated approach, this is what's in Microsoft's adoption roadmap, kind of really talks about is a federated approach, right? There's potentially a CDO controlled area of this, or an IT controlled executive leadership. There's one or two people that are running the department of BI, but the department of BI is actually distributed across many organizations. There's key stakeholders from multiple departments that are participating, that are asking for things, that are helping prioritize what's next, right? And so as your organization grows, I think, Tommy, the reason you were shuffled around so much in your company was because there was a lack of commitment at the company level to bring on more Tommies to run many versions of this in other departments. And so you were shuffled from the sales team because they were having some problems. Let's put you over there. You can solve some problems there. Okay, you solved some stuff. Okay, well, that's solved now. Let's shuffle you over to finance. They're having problems. So you shuffled to finance, right? So instead of actually saying, look, we need multiple roles in multiple different departments to federate more of this information out to broader teams, there should have been a part-time person. The organization wasn't making the commitment behind it to really bring on the staffing that they needed to fully support Power BI in all areas of the departments. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah. And I'm going to agree and disagree. So I do agree. I think more often than not, the best approach is the federated side. It can be under IT, but to me, it's more important. You couldn't be really under any department, but I think one of the biggest things I've learned, it's not just the technology and the data, it's the people and the process and the technology. Because to me, we had some great, the company that I used to work with, there's a lot of people are still there and they are awesome at Power BI and what they do. And they're still there. And to me, I don't think it was the lack of Power BI, like individuals. I think I've realized, and I think I realized this halfway through the journey. And to me, something I'm very passionate today is you're not going to be successful with your data unless you have two key things. If you have a key data governance program and you have a willingness for a data culture and adoption and what that actually looks like. And I think these are so fundamental. And for me, we're critical. If you were to say, what's your grow up point, not just I'm an analyst or I'm using Power BI, but where I'm at today and where I think I can, in so many words, hang my hat for the next 30 years, God willing, is around those two aspects of whatever the tool is going to look like in the future. Because we saw the tool is completely different than what it was 10 years ago. It's not just Power BI, but really what matters, because to your point, it's never been more commoditized and never been more accessible, is wherever you're going to land. And if you're going to want to be in this space for the long haul, you have to understand governance. You have to understand people's experience with their own data. And I think that works with, I'll agree with you. There's got to be the investment, but it's not just in the people doing it. It's on how are we going to make sure that people trust this? How are we going to make sure people are widely using this and want to explore more? Because Mike, you could have the best Power BI designers and report builders in the world at your organization, but that doesn't mean people are going to use it. This goes back to one of my hottest takes, I think, is there's no such thing as a perfect report. It does not exist in the world. No one has ever created a perfect report because it's in the eye of the beholder. And that goes back to me, this idea of data culture and adoption. And to me, this is where I land today, where I'm looking back at 10 years and I look back at where we are and where are we going? What is Fabric? All the tooling, you could expand on that. But at the end of the day, it's going to matter about three things. Do you have the right people involved in making decisions, because that is going to help the wider team trust and adopt. Do you have the right process in place in terms of being able to trust the data, because it's going through so many functions? And you could talk about the technology, but the technology changes. And then finally, do you have the right technology and investment in place? And to me, that's the critical junction here. That's the breaking off point to me when I look at people and when I look at organizations. So I know that doesn't answer the question completely about what department should it be in, but when I look at, regardless of a lot of organizations I've looked at now, and I've been lucky enough to be a consultant now for a few years, and it's been awesome to see organizations. I've been awesome to be an analyst, a director of BI, and kind of seeing the world, so to speak, seeing the different, and experience those different things. It's not the technology, it's not the bar chart. It's, to me, those three kind of critical factors. So it's a long-winded way, Mike, and I don't know how much you're going to agree with that or not, but for you, where are you at, I guess, now? What your kind of grow up story, and you look at ahead from now, what do you see? What are you looking at?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail. Well, I'm gonna respond to your comment, Tommy. I'm gonna kind of wrap up some final thoughts here. So I think you hit the nail on the head, right? You can only go so far with Power BI and building things if you don't have any governance or expansion of thought into how do we as a company are going to handle data. What is our company culture going to look like? And if you don't go beyond the fact that I'm just going to use this program and solve my one problem, that's a very narrow lens as to like what you can accomplish, right? So I think there's definitely value. So I don't want to discredit that thinking, that mode of like, I'm just going to get Power BI. I'm just going to build my report for my team, my small thing, right? That's still effective. It still saves people time. Right now, I think I'm really big on this kick around automation, everything automated, right? So a lot of what I used to do, if I step way back up, like big picture things, right? A lot of what I used to do was move data around in Excel. And I would move data between here and there. And I would do my analysis with a lot of manual steps. I think what's happened with Power BI and a lot of these things, we're now moving to a place where automation is becoming easier and easier. The technical side of how to automate things is not as heavy on pure code. There's UIs, there's interfaces. It's becoming easier. Now, this goes for not just Power BI, but also in Fabric. Fabric is becoming easier. I remember in the early days when I was using Spark, before it was even in Fabric, it was in Databricks at that time, and you actually had to run like Hadoop, or you could like install it locally on your machine. I would do that. Like that was very arduous, and a lot of technical pieces had to be in place just to get the dumb thing to run. And even then I was like, do I really understand what it's doing? I kind of do, but I'm not sure if I'm like 100% there. So what's happened now is a lot of that has become like, I don't worry about the infrastructure anymore. I just turn on a notebook and it just works. So there's a lot of service-based things. So again, if I look at the trend here, right? Everything is becoming more automated. Everything's becoming more seamlessly integrated together. Data is being able to be generated in real time. We're able to easily absorb that real-time data and put it in places where we can use reporting on top of it. All these really interesting things. So I think my reaction to your comment there, Tommy, governance is key. You're going to need to grow up as an individual, as an organization, to really make the data culture and the governance center. Right? Without those two things, you're going to be limited in scope. You're not going to be able to go as large as you want to with Power BI and find its full effectiveness. And I don't think that's just Power BI. I think that's any BI or any data tool. It's all across the board. Any one of them would be better if you were able to actually leverage more of that for people. So that's my thought there. So what's next, I guess, is the final part of your question. Where do we go from here? I really think from here we are going to, there's an interesting trend. I don't know how this will land, but I think the agentic or the AI side of things is going to really impact more. Again, I think the core of what we're doing is automation. Automation is at the core of what we're doing. But can we remove some of the I'm clicking buttons in the UI to make a pipeline? And can the MCP or can the AI agent figure out more of what I want to do just by talking to it, right? Is there additional context that the agents can now produce that I can then just speak to an agent and it decides? Like one of the challenges we have right now today, Tommy, is where do you put the data? What's the best optimized solution of where does it go? Do you put it in a SQL server because it's small? Do you put it in a lakehouse? Do you put it in a SQL data warehouse? Do you put it in Kusto, in KQL? Now we have other things like SQL databases there as well. So that's another thing we can pick. And there's just going to be more of them, right? What is the right mix of these things? And maybe what we do at some point is, or we get to, is I just communicate to the Fabric ecosystem and say, I want to do this. Here's the API call. Here's the instructions. I want to load this data every day. You figure it out. Like, and then the AI says, like, it's got all this information. Oh, okay, I can make this API call. Here's the data coming back from it. Okay, here's how I authenticate. I'm going to set that up. Boom, boom, boom. Like, it can just do more of these things for you. And so it's going to continually focus on more and more automation, but we're going to do it in a different way. I don't think we're going to spend as much time clicking on buttons, and we're going to start leveraging more and more of AI and other graphical type things that are going to make it easier for us to communicate and talk to it. So I think that's where it's going. There's a huge demand from the audience. Every single person I talk to talks about, I want to chat with the data. Like that I don't know if that's the right answer, honestly. I'm not sure if that's smart enough, intelligent enough to figure out how to build things that we want. But I do think there are like lightweight remedial tasks that the AI agents can start taking over that we don't need to do anymore. And that's kind of what I'm excited about. I'm excited about seeing where these agents can start lifting some of the lower end automation things for us. And then as we get better with it, as over time, if we look back 5 years from now, it'll be a totally different story than we're looking at now. But one thing for certain, it will still be around automated and auto movement of data from where it comes from into final reporting or final interaction, maybe not even reporting, right? We're probably just going to be going in and talking to an AI and it'll just generate a bunch of stuff for us. So the AIs are going to make report creation even more of a commodity than it is today.
All right. I got one last question for you, and it's really quick because I know we're at time. And this is going to be impossible to answer too. I'm just letting you know that. It's giving you a warning. And I will also do the same. But you got 10 years.
Answer it as well.
Yeah. Don't worry. I'm drinking the same cup you are. Give me Power BI in the last 10 years and what it meant to you and what it meant to organizations in a single word.
I have to pick one word.
You got to pick one word. Like I said, I'm drinking the same chalice you are, my friend.
I'm probably gonna this might not, well, the first word that comes to mind is flexible. Right? I think flexible is the word that I would use to describe Power BI over the last 10 years. It has changed how I build things. It has changed how I communicate about data. We have more options than ever to store, compute, create, do what we want to do. I think it has made organizations extremely flexible in how they interact with their data. I think there was less options before. I think more people have access to using and manipulating the data. So I think it makes companies more flexible in that space. That's what maybe my word. All right, now that I've stalled long enough, Tommy, what's your word?
Mine, I should end with something. Mine is uncovered. And what I mean by that is one of the coolest moments I ever had with Power BI when I felt like Tom Hanks in Castaway when he created fire for the first time, when I would put all this data together that previously there was impossible to create a relationship before. I remember this one. I still remember this report. And I'm going, I did this. This was not possible before to have these things talk to each other. And now it's in a report and you can click on this and do that. I have made fire, basically what it felt like. And I think for the individual and for a lot of organizations, it really does uncover or really unveil, maybe is a better word. It just unveils so many possibilities, to your point with the flexibility, but on what I can do as an individual, like what the skill set allows me to do, but also for organizations, what it allows them to connect that previously was impossible to do.
Love it. I think it's good.
I think
some other words from the community here. Donald says power. Jack says opportunity. I think that's a really good opportunity. I think I would also agree. There's a lot of opportunity. Like if you want to go down this career, that's I think that's also very good. Donald also says easy, right? Debatable. some parts of it are easy, some parts of it are not. Okay, maybe. But yes, there's a lot of, I think these are great words to describe what our interaction has been over the last 10 years around Power BI. So thank you all for joining us for this conversation. I hope this was a relevant conversation for you. Just kind of a fun, lighthearted conversation, not so technical in nature this time. Tommy and I reflecting on our careers, how we've used Power BI and how it's potentially changing what we do on a day-to-day basis. So I hope you found this conversation useful, and maybe you also have the same sentiment as well. You thought about Power BI or you've interacted with it, and maybe it's helped out your career as well. So hopefully it has, and hopefully there's many more years to go with Power BI and the evolution of data and this data space. For that, just make sure if you like this conversation, please share it with somebody else. We'd love to hear from you and others that this is a impactful community around Power BI and thinking through that as well. Tommy, where else can you find the podcast?
As always, you can find us on Apple or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to subscribe and leave a rating. It helps us out a ton. And share with a friend, since we do this for free. Do you have a question, idea, or topic that you want us to talk about in a future episode? Head over to powerbi.tips/podcast, leave your name and a great question. And finally, join us live every Tuesday and Thursday, 7:30 a.m. Central, and join the conversation on all Power BI Tips social media channels.
Awesome. Thank you all so much, and we'll see you next time.